We get new leaks around Red Dead Online pretty much every couple of weeks within the community. But out of all the leaks that we've had over the years, there's a very small percentage of them which end up being real content. 90% of everything we hear ends up leading to absolutely nothing, whether it be completely false in the first place or the content itself wasn't exactly what was originally leaked. But occasionally those leaks end up being true, and this is exactly what we're going to be exploring in today's video. Before we do get into the video though, I want to let you know about a project that I've been working on. It's no secret that I've created a lot of gaming channels, and because I've created so many, I know how to get them partnered in about 1 to 2 months without needing to promote them on other social media accounts. And I always get asked, how do I do it? That's why I've created an in-depth class on Skillshare. It goes through the basics of creating a new YouTube channel, but it quickly scales up into doing keyword research, planning videos, recording, editing, creating thumbnails, and eventually getting monetized, where you can actually start running your YouTube channel like a business by outsourcing the work. If you're interested in having your own gaming channel, then there is a link in the description down below, as well as you can find it as the pinned comment, and that will give you a free month of Skillshare where you can use that time to watch through my class, and at the end of it, you will understand everything that you need to know. So link to everything can be found in the description down below. Getting back into the video, the leaks that we'll be going through in this video isn't anything new because, well, let's be honest, we can't actually prove that it actually leads to real content, even if some of the most recent leaks are part of a future update. What we can do is link back to the previous videos that were shared on this channel and point to when they ended up being true. These are videos that were recorded weeks or even months before any update was released and still points directly to the content that was involved. So the first one, and probably the biggest one on this list, is the Naturalist role. The Naturalist was released on the 28th of July 2020, but it was actually mentioned months before. We first started hearing about the Naturalist within December of 2019 on the day that the Moonshine update was released. The Moonshiner was pushed to the game on December the 13th, 2019. And on this day, this is when data miners started to go through the files to see what new content was pushed to the files, and they came across snippets of code which mentioned the Naturalist. Now, back when this first happened, we did record a video here on this channel talking about exactly what this could mean. And for many of the comments within the video, most didn't believe anything like this was going to happen, just because it didn't sound like anything that players would enjoy. Some actually believed that the Moonshiner itself was originally going to be a Naturalist role, but at some point through the iterative cycle, Rockstar decided to change it from the Naturalist to the Moonshiner, but still keep some of the core gameplay mechanics. This is why there would still be variables within the code which mention a Naturalist, because this is what the Moonshiner was originally. Now, of course, there was no way that we could have known at the time. We were just sharing the news very much in a similar way as everyone else, but fast forward in 7 months, it ended up being true. The Naturalist was the next lot of content that was going to be added to the game. Admittedly, the first snippet of code which just had a variable as the Naturalist wasn't anything big, but it did lead to it being a leak around a whole role 7 months prior. And this wasn't the only leak that did point to content within the Naturalist update. The other leak that ended up being true was legendary animals. Legendary animals was something players wanted within Red Dead Online from the moment they finished playing RDR2. Legendary animals were dotted all over the world within story, and in all honesty, it didn't seem too difficult for Rockstar to implement a trapper where you could also bring in legendary animals. In April of 2020, there was a huge leak which pointed to a number of different potential gameplay features. There was loads of stuff which potentially pointed to serial killers coming into Red Dead Online, security doors where you're able to rob general stores. A shooting range can also be seen within these files, and we do know that the first leak hasn't led to anything. Everything on that list is either already within the game at the time in which this was first pushed, and everything else that is new hasn't been added ever since. But a leak that did end up being true, which came out at the exact same time, was the MP007 random event and MP007 legendary animals. For those that don't know, MP007 was there as a reference for the Naturalist update. This is just a way for Rockstar to code different updates. So the update after the Naturalist being a prestigious bounty hunter ended up being MP008, and the Blood Money update ended up being MP009. What we're waiting for currently is MP010. But getting back to this leak for MP007, it referenced legendary animals, which pointed to there being a bear, a cougar, a boar, a fox, a wolf, a beaver, a coyote, and an alligator. 8 new legendary animals which were supposed to be added to the game, and there was also other types of random events which were looking to be added as dynamic events into the game, which was called Unpaid Debt, Lock Safe, Sick Horse, Trapped Wagon, Suspension Trap, Slumped Hunter, and Crashed Wagon. This was another leak which ended up being true. MP007 did involve legendary animals, and for a lot of these animals they are part of that update. The only difference is instead of us getting 8 animals, there was in fact 42 in total, with this being split between Harriet missions and those also being within free roam, which do count as random events. What's also interesting about the random events is that they were added to the game. So Suspension Trap is a dynamic event which was added as part of this Naturalist update. But some of the other dynamic events on this list weren't added to the game, as well as there was also some other events which weren't part of this list which were added. Lock Safe still isn't a random event added to the game, but we do have other events such as Hunter Stalking and Poached Animals, which were never part of this list but ended up being part of the Naturalist. For whatever reason, Rockstar decided to hold back on that content, or they've potentially completely killed it off and it will never be added to the game. But they did take the time between April and July to add more events which ended up replacing them. Moving away from the Naturalist and looking at other leaks which ended up being true, ended up happening last year within 2021. 2021 wasn't much different to what we're going through in 2022, with there being a drought for a very long time of no content. Of course, now looking back to 2021, ended up having more content than what we've had over the last year. But going back to just after the prestigious bounty hunter was added to the game, we started to get leaks of a number of different audio files. These audio files seem to point to new types of missions where you could go through different types of outlaw activities, which at the time wasn't a thing. You had your roles which you can go through, but they weren't anything to do with you robbing different types of NPCs or doing anything as an outlaw. The closest we had was the Moonshiner being the underground bar, but that was really it. So with these audio files, it did sound like something big was happening. And this is where speculation started to come in. For those that played the Red Dead Redemption story, they linked the voice within these audio files to a young Seth Bryant. And what further backed this up was there is a model within the game which was added to Red Dead Online right at the beginning of its release, where there was a young Seth Bryant model. So everyone concluded that finally Rockstar were going to add him to the game, and he was going to be a new character that you can go to for different types of missions. This ended up being the only thing which was false about this leak, because the audio files were part of new content, but unfortunately it wasn't Seth Bryant. Instead, it was by a character called Josiah, who goes by in game as Jay. These missions didn't go down particularly well because it wasn't anything like players expected. Players did get hyped up with the idea of a young Seth Bryant being added, maybe before he went a bit crazy and his partner screwed him over. But instead we got another character by the name of Josiah, and the missions themselves weren't as big as what players were expecting. These were the Telegram missions, and for the first 3 that were added, you couldn't even play with your friend. You couldn't have a posse when going through them. You had to play them solo. And at the end of these missions, despite stealing jewelry and a lot of jewelry from houses where you then need to go and sell to Josiah, you would end up getting $10 to $15 out of it, despite stealing potentially hundreds. And to make matters worse, even though these missions were short and it really didn't involve that much, there also wasn't too many of them. There was only 3, which is weird because there are hundreds of audio lines for Josiah. Only a couple of them are being used for those original Telegram missions. And with some of the other leaks that we've mentioned within this video, there seems to be a reoccurring theme where if there is content that gets leaked and it does get pushed to the game, we don't get all the content. It is only a fraction of what's actually there. If Rockstar intended to put together these short missions that you can only go through as a solo player, that's fine, but there needs to be a lot more of them. If not, they need to be a lot bigger and then there being less missions in total. Players expected Rockstar to release 3 to 5 of these missions every single week up until we got the next major update, but that never happened. Later on, we did get the call to arms missions, which ended up being a lot better, and it did still involve Josiah. These survival game modes were leaked months in advance, and they actually ended up being good content, probably the best content that we had from the Blood Money update, which really says something because this is one of the last things Rockstar intended to drip feed. But even though they do count as Telegram missions, and they do still belong with Josiah as being the main character, Josiah doesn't actually talk within any of the call to arms survival game modes, and it doesn't make up for why there's hundreds of these audio files pointing to Josiah leading Telegram missions when there is only a couple being used. So this leak did point to content that was coming to the game, and that content was released as missions, but it's only been a fraction of what's actually there. For the rest, we don't know what's happening with them. But anyway guys, these are just some of the leaks that have been revealed weeks or even months before content was released within Red Dead Online. If you enjoyed this type of video, then make sure that you do show some support by liking and also leaving a comment. And if there's enough suggestions, I will put together a follow-up video where we can find even more leaks which ended up being true. But anyway guys, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going to see ya.